All right, we're back again. It is Wednesday night. I always get my days mixed up. It almost got me. Hope you guys are off to a good start for your week. Lots of things happen out there. As usual, the world is very chaotic right now. I don't know about you guys, but I, I feel pretty certain that I know what the end outcome is going to be. I know that how they mitigate, World War III and a lot of this stuff, but um, I think most people are really at a point of high uncertainty right now. I mean, you look at crypto markets, you look at traditional markets, you look at gold and silver, you look at all the assets and where they're priced. And many people have done well up to this point, 2026, on certain positions, and other people, are down. If you're in crypto, you're down. But I think we might be on the mend here. We've got some high volume that showed up today, and things are starting to turn around. Fear and greed index is up a little bit, not back at 5 like we have been for a while here. And you've got, geopolitical events poised to play out. Everything's still going on over there in the Middle East. You got stuff going on in Mexico. You've got, all the regulations and stuff around crypto here in the US that are coming to the forefront and hopefully getting across the line here. Maybe. I don't think it's going to be by the 1st of March. If they'd have to put it to a vote tomorrow and kind of ram it through, if they were going to do it that way. But they do have a summit. I was on Paul Barron's podcast a little bit earlier today. You guys should see that air maybe tomorrow, which will be exciting. But we talk about the summit at the end of the week where the banks, Ripple, and many other people in the industry will be advocating for whatever they're looking for out of the Clarity Act. You've got the OCC putting out basically asking for how they should govern the Genius Act for the banks and banks that are issuing stable coins and what that's going to look like, feedback on how they should implement it. So a lot of, I've said this before on here, but I would say it again, fundamentals are at an all-time high for crypto. If you're buying, and it's probably a good time for my disclaimer, nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always consult with a financial advisor before making any financial decisions. My opinions are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners. If you need a financial advisor, Digital Wealth Partners can help you out on the crypto side. Pretty much the only RIA in the US that can advise on crypto legally. So back to what I was saying. I feel like we're at a point in time, personally, very similar to like after the dot-com boom crashed. You've got fundamentals at an all-time high for this asset class, adoption, things rolling out, companies moving in, regulatory clarity right here on the horizon, and sentiments in the gutter. People are fed up, they're tired, they've been pushed down. We've seen, Jan Street, I don't know if you guys have been following that or not. Wild deal. They just deleted all their tweets. They were in trouble last year for some other issues, and now apparently they've been sued by Terra Luna for insider trading or front running, basically on insider knowledge and potentially causing Terra Luna to happen. It's not here or there. I told people about Terra Luna, and I thought it was going to go under many months before it did. There are multiple people that I could call, and they'd be like, "Yeah, you." You said that it wasn't sustainable, which anything producing a 20% yield or more, I really need to understand the underlying mechanisms by which they're doing that. There are some people that do private credit that do very well. There's other people that I've seen have that type of return on real estate if you're buying properties the right way. But at scale with billions of dollars to continue to generate 20%, and they were guaranteeing that on UST, it's really hard to put that much money to work and get that much alpha. As you add more and more capital, the opportunities that you're able to participate in and manage become much more cumbersome. So like as an example for you guys, you could find, multifamily deals in tertiary or secondary markets, kind of a fix and flip, put a pitched roof on it, upgrade things that are going on if they're an older property that was built in the 80s, and you could raise rents, especially if it's highly occupied. You know, those types of situations, you put $500,000 to $1 million into a property. Thank you, my wonderful wife with the tea. Oh, I will get it. Thank you. You put that much money in that property, and the equity goes up. You can raise rents, and the majority of those people are going to stick around. And now you have a very sustainable cash flowing property. And if you financed it right, if you bought it right, you're in a really good spot. If you get into primary markets for real estate, multifamily, I mean, you might be looking at 20, 50, 100 million, $300 million deals. You're really not going to get that type of return on those on an annual basis over the total term, or the 5 years or 6 years that you're going to hold that property. Because you want the depreciation off of it to be able to offset the cash flows. That's the way a lot of those funds work. And they'll hold it to term, and they're looking for like a 20% return on the total property at the end of it. And that's assuming that, we're going to continue to see real estate values go up. There's a lot of people in the real estate space right now that are telling me that people are having a hard time selling properties at their asking price. They believe it's worth one thing. Buyers believe it's worth something else. I think we're about to move into a buyer's market here in real estate. But I'm trailing off here. So I'll bring it back to the point. When you're managing lots of money, it becomes difficult to gain that much alpha. And if you're consistently paying out 20%, you're either doing something really unique and you're not going to tell anybody about it. And you've figured out, something in the market to be able to exploit it and do really well. Or it's a fugazi. We did have, unfortunately, another situation come out today. The DOJ has gone after Goliath Fund. A couple people had told me about that, maybe 12 months ago. They had a liquidity pool on USDC that they were paying like 60% returns on annually. Smelt kind of fishy. And sure enough, unfortunately, it looks like, they were running a Ponzi with a total of $382 million in that slush fund. Again, not here or there. They're going to have to go through court. They're going to, do everything that they're going to do. But the DOJ is probably not going to bring a case unless they've already got all the information that they need. So, keep your head on a swivel out there. If it seems too good to be true, probably is. Our funds have done okay. The ones I can talk about, 5% over the last 9 months will be a year in April this year. If we see some aggressive price moves in the market, could do better than that here in the last quarter. They're market neutral strategies. Sometimes they're down over a quarter. That happens. That happens if stuff's real, right? We've never guaranteed returns. Just like any other investment, it is a opportunity, but it might not pan out in the time frame that you're hoping for, right? And that's why we encourage people to hold, in the funds that we have for a year, multiple years, because over those periods, over longer durations, they have performed exceptionally well in comparison to other opportunities in the market. But when you're looking at short-term time frames, anything can happen. I mean, it's crypto, right? So all that being said, I'm hopeful that we're going to get regulation here. The SEC is going to have oversight on some stuff as they bring these protocols, to the forefront, and they start using them for DeFi and other things. There's got to be some type of oversight in there to make sure that bad actors are, held accountable if that's going on. And that's the part of the Clarity Act that I think they might pull out. I've talked about this a couple times, but I think they're going to pull out the DeFi provisions and kind of kick the can on that so that we can get clarity across the line here. And we are going to know, where the lanes are for the rules of the road for the SEC and the CFTC on which assets qualify in which one of those categories. So hopefully that happens here in the next 30 days. We got, Patrick Witt calling for that by Easter. And I still think that XRP has a high potential to appreciate prior to that Clarity Act being passed or right before. The other thing I'll say, which is interesting if you got your tinfoil hat on, is tomorrow is 958 days since We got the ruling on XRP July 13th of 2023 that XRP in and of itself is not a security. So, there's a lot of 589s out there. There's the 958 tomorrow. We'll see. I'm not, counting on anything. The market's starting to turn around here, but we've still got to have all these macroeconomic catalysts to really play out to see anything close to what I've been talking about for a long time. Paul was trying to get me to nail down a price today, and I said, hey, look, my attorneys are pretty fed up with me, making specific price calls at this point. So they've asked me to give ranges and base those on, the macro events, which again, like I believe all of that stuff. So that's what we're sticking to, and that's what we'll stick to tonight. If anybody asks me price predictions, that's what you're going to get. So we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out on your Wednesday night to come hang out with me over here on YouTube, X, Facebook, and on TikTok. And hopefully you guys are getting value. I never always forget to say this, but if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, share if you're finding value here. It does help the channel grow and helps the algorithm. And we appreciate the support. All right, we got Steel City Flooring. I've got this one other super chat over here. I know my wife's going to come remind me if I don't read it, which I appreciate her for doing. But we're going to go ahead and take this one first. Steel City Flooring says, thoughts on price appreciation and borrowing against XRP, possibly waiting a year to see how the market reacts to the clarity and institutional adoption, and waiting to be safe, not get liquidated. Thanks, God bless, top 4% holder. I think that's a great great outlook, right? Like if you don't need the money today, this is an investment. You got a 4 or 5, 10-year time horizon. You're able to, put stuff away, plant a seed, not think about it. I think that's a great way to do it. I'm very confident that a year from now, we're going to have a lot more options and rates are going to be way down in comparison to what they are today. And you will, have lots of different opportunities and really have people bidding against one another to be able to get your business. We've aggregated a lot of those people at Digital Wealth Partners. They have, Mercury, not Mercury, excuse me, Maple, we've got Galaxy, we've got Arch Lending, bringing on a few others to be able to get access to liquidity against your XRP. Lantern Finance is another one that's out there. DeFi, there's risks with that, with the volatility in the market, but like, you're talking about here, a high stable value XRP, and you feel good and secure about it, it's probably a better time to borrow against it. And at that point, I think the risk will be much lower. And like I said, you're going to be able to get a much better rate. All right, we'll jump to the super chat that was mentioned here. They say, money disrupted was phenomenal, very disturbing, yet helpful. Creature from Jekyll Island equals evil man. Could the Fed be interwoven with Ripple? We actually answered this one. So I don't know if they had logged off before I had got it or not, but if they want to watch it back, I did answer that on the last one. Again, I'll kind of just reiterate on it. Greg Kidd was the 4th, 5th employee there at Ripple, and he did get Ripple an audience with the Fed in 2014. I think when they showed up, they said, kick rocks. We've got the system that works, and we're not going to allow you to disintermediate that with this crazy new bridge asset. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they got rolled in back then. Maybe that's why, I think BlackRock and XRP or Ripple are much more involved than, a lot of people might understand. But I think it's for good. Like, I do think the Fed, I'm hopeful, just like everybody else, that the Fed will be dissolved. The IRS will go away. We'll have a, flat sales tax across everything, a value-added tax, and the complicated tax code that we help people with will be gone. Hopefully we've got all these AI agents, and we've got prosperity, and we've got a bunch of other stuff that, drives huge amounts of economic growth, and we're able to rake in a lot of money, and the government actually makes money instead of, running in a deficit. The last time we were in a surplus was like the 90s. I was actually just looking at a deal the other day that showed lead exporters globally. And America was the lead exporter all across the 90s. So if that tells you anything, manufacturing coming back here, Trump talks about that a lot. That's kind of the whole premise behind the tariffs. We'll see what happens with Congress. I get it. Like, I get what he's trying to do. And there's going to be pain in the short term for that. There's really no way around higher prices or other things if you really do want to onshore, all that manufacturing and bring that back here. And then you can lower costs with, technological advancement and the deflationary pressure of implementing that stuff. But we got to get manufacturing back over here to rebuild the infrastructure in our nation. And as we do move away from the global reserve currency, the dollar is no longer in that position. We're not going to be able to export our inflation globally. You won't have Triffin's dilemma anymore. And I think that's going to add a lot of fuel to the fire to bring things back here onshore, which will be great. All right, let's find some more super chats here. We've got Roberto. He says, watched your video where you talked about how people are going to be caught surprised by their wealth. And at this point, getting people prepared to think about preparing for that is job one. God love you, Jake. I know we do. Appreciate that, Roberto. Look, I've built all these services and these partnerships and connections to make all this stuff easy. And again, it was very selfish, honestly. I did well in 20 and 21, and I want to make sure that other people have the same options and are afforded the same benefit that I was. But irrespective of any of that, I'm hopeful that people that watch my content just, one, dream bigger and believe that things can happen for them. And then two, have so much conviction if they're invested in certain assets that they start to take action toward those things. They, look at estate plans. They start to understand, how to mitigate taxes or structure things to prevent creditors from taking it. Or, if you're going to come into a lot of money, you got kiddos, maybe you're looking at prenups. There's just so many different things that more money, more problems, right? Like, that's a real thing. And that is a reason that a lot of lottery winners go broke in 3 to 5 years. If you don't ever think it can happen to you, and then it does, and you're caught off guard, and you haven't prepared yourself and, have the financial education and counselors and good people around you to help you be a good steward of that money, you can easily squander it. We've seen lots of people do that. So my hope is that we obviously want to do everything that we can to help people, but there may be people that don't want to work with us. We're not their cup of tea, which is perfectly fine. And at least they're going to know the questions to ask these other professionals. They're going to be educated. They're going to be in a much better position when this happens than they would have been if they were caught off guard and didn't believe it and just had their head in the sand. So that's really the whole initiative behind the mastermind and everything else that we do. We just want people to have access to good information and at least start working toward understanding these things so that they aren't in a bad spot when it happens. Mr. Johnson, good to see you. He says, Monday, you said used pharma for bulk before Mr. Rectom attacks again, calling you a roid user. I don't think so. By admission, can you please clarify your roid use? How much, for how long? Be honest. Started when I was 23 and still currently on TRT, 34. Competed natural first. My first show, I was about 180 pounds at 5 or 6% body fat when I was 22. And then I did 3 more shows the next year before I started taking pharmaceuticals. Was bigger, but a little softer in those shows. And then from, what would that have been? When I was 23 until 29 was when I kind of stopped. I went from, call it 200 pounds to the largest I was 260. So about 60 pounds of muscle in 6 years, 10 pounds a year. I wouldn't call myself a, hyper responder to any of that stuff. I trained hard. I ate right. I slept good. I was super disciplined. I didn't miss a meal for probably 6 years of that. 300 plus grams of protein per day. My wife hated it, because I was so disciplined with everything that I wouldn't eat stuff and she would cook for me. And then it's just not a good dynamic if you guys have ever been through that. if you're dieting and your spouse is their love language is cooking for you. So yeah, I mean, how much, how long? I'd run like a 12, 16 week cycle, getting ready for shows, higher dosages, obviously, than just TRT, multiple compounds most of the time, and some orals toward the end to kind of harden up. I mean, I got my hair redone, right? So you just need to understand, like, if I thought I was going to be pro, and I did compete, at the national level a couple different times, and never got sponsored. Which today, like social media, would have been fantastic, and I didn't put the time into it when I was doing that. But it's really kind of the only way to make any money on that stuff now. The magazine covers and all that other stuff, and then Mr. Olympia makes a lot of money, but even the smaller divisions, like if you look at classic physique, which I think those guys actually look better than the open bodybuilders. Like 50, 60K if you're the best guy in the world. Mr. Olympia last year, I think, made 800,000 for winning that title. Derek Lunsford. So, and it's been cool to watch guys that I competed with at nationals go on to be pros and compete and do really well. But yeah, that's GH. I like GH. If you can get a script for it, it's good. Low dose. The most I ever did on GH was like 8 IUs every other day, and that was toward the end when I was trying to get bigger. When I pushed up to 260, I weighed in at 212 to make weight. I dropped 18 pounds in 2 days for my last show at nationals in Miami in 2019. Didn't eat anything for almost 2 days. Only had a liter of water, and I sat in a sauna for about 7 hours to sweat off 18 pounds in 2 days. Obviously, my body didn't rebound very well from that. I didn't place well, which was unfortunate. But I'm kind of glad for that, because after that, I was like, look, like I've accomplished everything I wanted to in bodybuilding. I set out to be like 225 at 5%, and that's what I was on stage there. So hung it up. I haven't competed since then. I still work out occasionally. And hey, like I said, just hang out on TRT. Let's see here. He's got another one. He says, Big Jake Stud, what are your top 3 cryptos after Clarity Act is passed? B, what further things in this present global environment need to play out for price appreciation to kick in? Details, please. Great questions. Rick's on it tonight. Oh, this is really good. My wife makes wonderful tea. She's a nice lady. All right. So 3 cryptos post Clarity. HBAR, XRP, and these will be my positions, right? So, well, actually, let's just play this out. You guys know I hold all my stuff in XRP currently. To diversify. So I'm going to talk about diversifying into 3 other cryptos post Clarity, because I do think there's going to be a slower run up for those as they get adopted. I think they're going to be move more like a Solana went through their adoption. So HBAR, we'll call it XDC, and Hash, HASH, which you're not going to be able to just look up on CoinMarketCap. It's Provenance's coin. It's listed under Provenance. They're on CoinMarketCap. They still haven't moved it over to Hash yet. But those would be my 3 for if you're looking for ROI. And again, this isn't financial advice. You should do your own research. I'm just one guy on the internet, one source of information, and these are my opinions. You should not base your financial decisions on my opinions. You should make your own or speak with a financial advisor. But those would be my 3 if I had to pick 3 post Clarity that I think I'll be taking positions in to get a significant amount of upside. And those would be long-term holds for me too. I think that those will see a lot of adoption over the next 5-10 years, and have ability to borrow against them and, put them in yield products and other stuff. And then B, further things that are present in the global environment that need to play out for price appreciation. Well, we need escalation in oil's price. We need the reverse carry trade to unwind. I mean, you guys know the domino theory, so I'm not going to belabor that. Some of the things that are kind of out of left field, there's been like little knick-knacky things that have happened as far as legislation goes with the OCC and some other counterparties that I think needed to be in place before they could really roll this thing. One of those was the broker-dealer undercut, or the premium that you had to pay on stable coins. You weren't able to margin them. They now are cash equivalents, so that was a big deal. Ripple obviously got their banking charter and license. Maybe that needs to be finalized, and they move out of the provisional phase. They're currently about 90 days into that at this point. And so they, I don't know if it's 90 days or 6 months or how long the OCC, issues that provisional license for, but I would expect that the first 5 that were issued are probably up for review and audit for the first 90 days of their performance. And I'm sure they probably did a back audit, before they even gave them the provisional charter. So we'll see, who maintains the charter. I'm hopeful that all of them do. With them issuing a new charter for crypto.com, I'd expect that, like I said, they're probably reviewing the other ones to make a determination and finalize them. Trying to see. When I looked things up, I didn't see any direct money transmitter licenses or licenses to operate in India for Ripple. They've got it pretty much everywhere else that I can tell, but I didn't see any, like they have partner banks and stuff there that they work with in India, but maybe they need the actual licenses there in India. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. But again, that's kind of separate of price. That's Ripple's business model. So really the price is going to come down to BlackRock ETF, supply shock, low amounts of XRP on the exchanges, and the volume moving from the OTC desk and the dark pools, because there's not any left there, onto the exchanges to push the price to a place where they can start using it. I believe it's the supply and demand dynamic that pushes the price into a range where it can start being used. And then once there's enough liquidity in the asset, that's when they start using it. And until then, like if they turned it on now, it wouldn't work because there's not enough liquidity in XRP. We're starting to see transactions on the network ramp up here, especially in the last couple weeks. We've seen that move up. So, and then with volume turning around today, we had a lot of buy orders in early on the ETFs this morning. I think it did like 5 million in the first 8 minutes or something, and then it kind of cooled off from there. So, the price is up today off the bottom. Do we have another swing lower? We could. I'm kind of with Blockchain Backer. Again, I'm not a TA guy. I watch him for the technical analysis. He thinks we could come back up and then waddle sideways and then do one more plunge before we see the upside in the market. Quite possible. Again, I don't have any short-term price predictions or anything. It is all predicated on global macroeconomic events and supply shock and all the things that we just discussed. So those are the things that are kind of still question marks in my mind on things that probably need to happen. Batch payments, be great if that was passed, but that's going to take a little while because they're going to have to update the network and then repropose a new amendment. And I'm excited for Borrow Lend and the pseudo accounts and the other stuff that are coming to the network here this year. I'd expect to see those put through at some point, either late Q1 or early Q2. Makes a lot of sense for some of the other things I think we're seeing on the horizon with Evernorth, finalizing their SPAC, because we know they're going to be seeding DeFi protocols. So, Roberto says it's going to be huge. Yeah, I don't know if you guys caught the State of the Union last night. I'm not, going to get into the political side of things. I know a lot of people loved it, a lot of people hated it. But if you want to leave comments down below the video and let me know what you thought about. At least we won in hockey, right? Like we took it from Canada. Like you can't be mad about that. A lot of other good things stated there too. Presto 4130 says why do all the news channels always talk about Bitcoin, Solana, and ETH, but never mention XRP? Almost like it doesn't explains. almost like it doesn't explain. I'm assuming you mean exist. They show it all the time. They'll show the background of XRP or Ripple when they have Brad Garlinghouse on or somebody else from Ripple. They will talk about it. But to your point, they are consistently showing those three to the public. Kind of look over here, don't look over there type thing, in my opinion. I'll say this too. So you guys probably have seen the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belford. You've watched that movie. You kind of know his background. So I got to see Jordan Belford speak in front of a large conference in 2021. It was an NFT conference that we went to. And he almost said XRP. He listed a bunch of other stuff and then said X, and then he went on to something else. Like he was told not to say it or something. They talked about Terra Luna at that conference and UST and how great it was. And I'm like, this is not going to work out good. And sure enough, 3 months later, it imploded. Which luckily the people that I was with, I think, got them to stay away from it, which was, they were like, thank you, because I was going to put a bunch of money in it. But anyway, when he spoke, he omitted it. There's been a few other people that I've seen kind of pivot. Elon Musk was asked directly from a guy in the crowd a little while back about XRP, and he said, he thinks it's great, kind of like some of the other networks, compared it to Doge and settling value. He hasn't explicitly come out himself unprompted and stated that, but I do think that Elon will come out and talk about XRP. You've got X payments. I think X payments probably end up on Hyperledger though. I don't know that they'll end up on the XRPL. But yeah, very interesting that the mainstream media doesn't talk more about XRP, but I don't think they want to draw attention to it. Like I said, it needs to be an orchestrated event for them to push the price to where it needs to be able to accomplish all their objectives. And if retail's clamoring or FOMOing, it could cause some problems. And that's why they have the escrow and some other stuff to be able to suppress the price and hold price stability. And people will say it's manipulated. I would agree with that. But it's also doing what it's supposed to do, which is trade sideways for extended periods of time. This person says, I don't trust the media. I think that that's a great attitude to have, and you should probably, watch stuff like this, watch X, watch YouTube. I get the majority of my news information over there from X and Twitter. Brody, my man, he says, what insights was Eric Trump able to provide you about XRP, and how involved do you think Donald Trump is with XRP? Do you feel like he's planning to use? I saw Eric Trump at SALT last year, and I was able to speak with him for a short period of time in the VIP section. Just let him know, what we were doing, a little bit about XRP. We didn't talk extensively, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. I do believe that the kids, both Eric and Don Jr., have talked about XRP and that they like it. Donald himself, talked about XRP in the crypto reserve. We could see that on Friday this week. We could see, maybe they've audited the government and they know what the government holds. That would drive some FOMO if the government was holding a bunch of XRP and they put that in, the reserve for the US. But we'll just have to see. Interesting depegging of USD1, and then kind of some back and forth from Eric on that. People were, I don't know if he actually deleted tweets or not. There was a lot of people posturing and saying that he did, but then he came out later that day in support of World, Liberty Financial and that network. So I don't know on that one, but I do think that they definitely understand XRP. I'll say this. So I got to share a little bit of time with Robert F. Kennedy a couple times while he was on the campaign trail, and got to talk to him. And what I liked about Robert is he actually talks about the issues. He understands that there are issues. I don't know that he knows how to solve them, but he sees them and will actually point them out. And so I appreciated that. And I did get to talk to him a little bit about crypto and XRP. Obviously, he did not win the election, and now he's on the cabinet in a different position. But he did not seem super up to date on it while he was on the campaign trail. Same thing, Robert Kiyosaki, and this is probably 3 years ago when I met Robert. Super Bowl in 23. Big Bitcoin guy. Obviously, that's done well for him over that duration. But spoke to his business partner and explained cross-border payments and the utility of XRP, and he was like, "Wow, I had no idea." So, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that I hold in a very high regard that are extremely intelligent, have domain expertise in other areas, and have been very successful, that for whatever reason just haven't even looked into this. That's not on their radar. And I think now it is, right? Like after the SEC case and everything that's transpired over the last 5 years, I think it's on a lot more people's radar, and they're starting to realize. And we've seen an uptick in wallets and all the other stuff for usage of the network, and we're about to see the adoption curve go vertical on it, in my opinion, here in 2026. I mean, Monica Long, I'll just refer back again to what she said, XRP Community Day. She said, full-scale institutional adoption for the XRPL and XRP here in 2026. So hopefully you guys are prepared. I know it looks bleak out there right now, but what Brad came out and said this the other day. He said, be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. Still pretty fearful out there. So if you have the capital to deploy and you talk to your financial advisor, might look to do that. We got T Mac V8X. He says, "My bro in Christ, what's up, dude? Heads up, Wyoming LLC still has 0.0002% annual fee on the website. Also double checked with them. Thanks for a lot for the South Dakota LLC. May our Lord continue to bless you and your beautiful family." Appreciate that, man. That is what it says on the website. I was advised by my attorneys that is no longer the case. So I probably need to reach back out to them and verify that. Oh, one thing that I do want to mention that I found pretty cool. We talked about this in the mastermind not that long ago, because it was a question somebody came up with, and it was actually a really good question. So the advisor fees over there at Digital Wealth Partners, they were like, "Can you write those off?" Because I mean, most everybody over there holds their assets in an LLC. Traditionally, you would not be able to write off AUM fees. Okay. The caveat and the reason that you can with ours, and this has been verified by multiple CPAs, is that we're providing custody for the assets, and that's wrapped in to the AUM fee. So because we're providing that additional service and there's custody for the asset, you are able to write that off on your taxes as an expense for the business. So big win for those that do have their assets over there at Digital Wealth Partners. You should be able to, you're not going to pay taxes on the money that you paid for the fees. Jeff Dunn, my man, he says, "Jake, AI says Iran can shut down the Strait of Hormuz down for a few days before U.S. opens it back up with superior Navy, which only spikes oil to $90 or $100 a barrel. If true, does this IR send XRP to triple digits?" Yeah, I think so. It doesn't need to be a long period of time that this gets shut down, by the way. I've stated that before. It just needs to be enough to push the Bank of Japan to have to aggressively raise interest rates. Any amount, they're on a razor's edge over there with the inflation in their economy, and any move in energy is absolutely going to cause them to move and have to move very quickly. So even if it was just 4 days, it could absolutely push oil that high in a very short period of time, and that's all we need. Everything rolls after that. Press the wrong button. Who's got the button? Oh, it took me all the way to the bottom. We want to go back up here. Nope, we already did this one. Okay, sorry. Getting my bearings about me again here. Did that. Here we go. All right, 7up or 7U. They say, what are the differences in use case / catalyst for a 3, 4, 5, 6-digit XRP respectively? And how can we estimate the time periods for those if we remove interplanetary commerce as a factor? Great question. So 3 digits is really kind of the supply shock where they can start using it. And that would settle, whatever volume on the maybe the back end of the stock market or a portion of Swift, like 20% of Swift. So if that was the case, we'll just go ahead and do the math here. We'll call it $1 trillion per day moving over the network. I think could absolutely, be possible if we had $100 XRP. As that escalates up, I mean, the back end settlement of the stock market's 6 trillion. There's $600 trillion in global stock markets. Back into the FX market, pretty similar. It's 5-6 trillion a day. So these things start adding up, right? And then there's more and more demand for the XRP to be able to settle these transactions and be routed over the network through the DEX, settling through XRP. The more liquid XRP is, the higher the price XRP is, the cheaper those payments are going to be, the faster they're going to settle, all those things. So, 3 digits, just cross-border payments would kind of be my guess. 4 digits is probably the back-end settlement of global markets. 5 digits would be derivatives, excuse me. So, that's somewhere between 400 trillion and $4 quadrillion. There's really no determined notional value for derivatives globally. And we know that that's coming. Ripple, I think, is well positioned to capitalize on that market and leverage XRP in that capacity. And if XRP becomes a tier 1 asset, it can be used as collateral for derivatives, which is a big, big deal. The more XRP that's locked up, the less is available for use, the higher the price is, everybody wins, right? And that's the beautiful thing about this. It's a positive feedback loop over and over and over again to push the price higher and pull us out of debt and do all the stuff. So 6 digits is, like you said, interplanetary commerce. Like that's a ways out. Like we've got to have global GDP has to become exponentially higher. There's got to be AI economies and agents, agentic stuff. You just saw Ripple invest in a $5 million seed round for, was it T54? I don't remember the name of the company, but you can go look at it. They just invested in that seed round for agent-to-agent payments. If that doesn't tell you that that's coming and it's going to be a huge market, huge, I don't know what else does. Ripple only invests in things that are going to add value to the XRPL and the ecosystem. And they do a good job of picking winners most of the time. They made some bad investments and calls, but everybody does, right? I would say the majority of their calls have been very fruitful. And obviously they advocate for those companies and help them move things along. And that's the benefit of getting an investment from Ripple. So I'm expecting big things from that company. I'm expecting the proliferation of agents and that whole economy and the payments. That's going to be a much larger economy of payments than we ever thought about doing as humans. And I know that sounds super sci-fi, okay? But the reality is, like, we're not that far from that. Max Avery sent me an article this morning, which is kind of disturbing. The pace at which AI is progressing, we really only have like maybe 3 years of the civilization as it exists today before it's completely papered over and looks very different. And that's going to be hard for a lot of people to adjust that quickly. If you're not using AI to augment your ability to perform at a high level, I would highly encourage you to start playing with it, start using the LLMs, Claude, ChatGPT and the others. You can do, you can vibe code. So if you don't know what vibe coding means, like how many people, I can't see your raise of hands, but I can imagine here, you've had this awesome idea for an app. You're like, man, if I had like coders and money and I had, $500,000 to be able to spin this up, I'd crush it. I've had those ideas. I know other people have had those ideas. You can now do that without having to spend anywhere near that much money. You can hire a guy off Fiverr to QC your code in whatever code language the AI decides to build it in. You can tell it what you want it to do, and it will build the app for you. The world that we're moving into and how quickly you'll be able to get a product to market and completely disintermediate somebody else. If you know how to market things and the cost to build stuff becomes almost zero, man. Anyway, again, highly suggest that you go check that stuff out. Try to build an app, right? Just even if it's something simple. I think that's a good use of your time. And worst case scenario, you're a little bit more intelligent about this stuff and might be able to use it. So it's coming. And on the other side of that type of economy, where we have multiple economies separate of human economies, that's when we're going to see that 6-digit XRP. John, Mr. Jags, he says, why is it so important for the US to cause price appreciation? Why can't all these other countries cause price appreciation more than what has been? No cheesecake tonight for me. The US is the leader. They're the current global reserve currency. Anybody that disintermediated us, it would be seen as an act of war. We have the world's largest military by far and the most advanced stuff at this point. That's really the only thing holding the dollar dominance is we're the guy with the biggest stick. And so that's what's supporting the dollar right now because it's no longer the petrodollar. I think it needs to be on the US's terms. We know that it's going to get disintermediated. We know that we're moving away from the dollar. They want to retain as much control as they can in that transition and make sure that we're still going to maintain some dominance in the new paradigm that's going to move out of it. And I think that's been negotiated with these other nations. And I think everybody's coordinated on the same page. A lot of what's going on right now. So as an example, did you hear about us going to take out that cartel leader? I didn't hear nothing until it happened. Same thing with Venezuela. Did you hear anything before they went down there and did that? When they were running that op? Nope. Why is there so much publicity around all the presence that we have over there in Iran and in that region? Seemed like a lot of theater to me. If you're really going to run an op, if you're really going to take somebody out and do something, you don't tell them you're coming, right? And like the whole war between Iran and Israel has also been weird. They were like, "Hey, we're going to come blow up this base. You better evacuate all these people." That's not how war works. At least traditionally, maybe we're in a social media age, and so stuff leaks out and all this stuff. Seems weird to me. So, all that being said, this feels to me fairly orchestrated to get the spike in oil and cause all that to happen. So, this person says, "I thought you said you knew about the deal." I asked if you had heard about it. Victor, my man, he says, legend, heard a news piece today that the carrier trade is overblown and that Japan has got it handled. I believe it was Standard Charter that said this. What are your thoughts? Appreciate all the efforts and belief. Do you remember who? Jim Cramer. Do you remember the weekend before Bear Stearns went under? Like the Friday before? He came out and he was like, "Yeah, Bear Stearns is a buy." And now everybody like laughs about that and says inverse Cramer. Anything that he says, like everybody bets against. Whatever they put out in the media is to quell people's concerns. It's not real. There's a large amount of leverage that's still left in Japan. And the main the main problem outside of markets and the mountains of liquidity that have been put to work in those is treasuries. When we see Japan's bond rates rise and ours fall, you are going to see a rotation out of US treasuries into Japanese bonds. Our Fed and Warren Buffett are already front running that. They bought a bunch of yen because they think that's going to appreciate compared to other currencies, and they're going to be able to lend it out so that people can repay those loans, and they're going to be making a lot of money off of refinancing those loans. So that's, my 2 cents on it. I think there's a lot more left in that than what they're going to put out there publicly. KT411GCN says, after Clarity Act becomes law, with the guidelines, will the guidelines be enough for institutions to go by, or do they have to wait the 360 days before law for the Clarity Act to take full effect? I think that they would be fine with that. I mean, the SEC and the CFTC are both already, on board. There's bipartisan support for this. Democrats are obviously in opposition to a lot of things that are in the Clarity Act, and so they voted against it, but they got it through because there was 12 to 11. So they're going to vote on it. We'll see what comes out of the summit on Friday. But I think that a bank's an institution, I can tell you they're chomping at the bit. They want something passed so that they can start using these networks to drive down costs for them and increase their profit margins. They see the benefit now. Like, it is coming, and it's coming fast. So I don't think that that's going to stop anybody, especially if the regulators are on board. NJM0727 says, hey, Jake, thanks for all the work and the info. I continue to I continue to stack XRP, waiting for price appreciation. I'm a long-term holder. Curious your thoughts on XTC versus HBAR for greater ROI through 2030 and beyond. Well-articulated question. Sorry, it's late for me and I can't speak. It's been a long day. XTC versus HBAR. I would really need to understand total addressable market for both. So let's just look it up. We're going to Google total addressable market. TAM is the abbreviation for that. And this is today. This is not AI and all the other stuff. Trade finance. And XDC can be used in other applications. Anything that is a contract that has value can be tokenized on XDC. All right. Google AI says the total addressable market for trade finance software is rapidly growing. That's for software. I just want. Let's try trade finance GDP. It's at 2.2 billion on that. Here, 2.2 trillion. Okay, so that's pretty close. It says total GDP made up of exporting and importing goods and bills of lading and all of the stuff that's involved with trade finance grew to $2.5 trillion in 2022. So 10% a year looks like, maybe a little bit less than that. Total global growth projected at 3.3% for 2026. So maybe we're looking at $3 trillion total addressable market for XDC if it only gets that application. We know that they're going after that one. So that's what I'm going to use for that. HBAR, we're going to do GDP from web apps. Because I think that they're going to be the main provider for decentralized applications based on the consortium and the board, or what's it called? Council that they've built for that platform and the people that are on it. This says that digital economy, apps, software, internet services has grown to represent 18% of US GDP. So this is just US GDP. which is $4.9 trillion in early 2025. All right. So I just kind of, again, do the same thing I do for companies. I go look at what they're trying to solve, what application it's going to be used in. I look at the total addressable market for that. I assume that they're going to aggregate about 80% of that and be the market leader like Google is, or, Pareto principle. So let's say XDC ends up with $2.5 trillion moving over the network, and just the GDP for web services and apps and other stuff, not global, which the other was global, is 4.9 trillion for HBAR. So if they get 80% of that, we're looking at, call it $4 trillion, just the US market. Global markets are probably 10 trillion, somewhere in there if you're at 80%. I'm going to go with HBAR. There's a higher total addressable market for that. Let's look at the total supply for HBAR real quick. So tokenomics do come into play. Total supply for HBAR. I should know this, but I don't. I know that XDC is like 38 billion. Total supply for HBAR is 50 billion. So circulating supply is currently 43. Circulating supply for XDC is like 19. They have about half the supply out there. By 2030, I would expect all the tokens to be on the market. You'd have full circulating supply of both of these. So you're going to go with the one that has the higher addressable total market that they're going after. So, if I had to narrow it down over the next 6 years, well, 4 years, golly, already 2026, next 4 years, which one I thought would perform better, that's the way I would look at it. And based on the numbers that I have and the data and information that I can find on the internet, I'm going to say HBAR, outperforms XDC over that period. I think it's important to walk you guys through that type of stuff. If you don't want that, I can just answer it. But I want people to have because I know other people have these questions and they're like, well, how do I even figure that out? Or, well, I don't want to just ask Jake or one of these other people. Do it for yourself. You can go look up the same information. And again, that's just one way to do it. There's a lot of different ways that you could value these assets, but that's the way that I have found that makes the most sense to me. A couple more super chats here. We already did those. Did that one. Always kicks me up in the chat about halfway through the night. We must be about an hour in. Sure enough, there we are. Wiki Plays says Japan apparently has a lot of oil reserves from government and private stockpile, enough to last 200 days. How would an unwind happen for just a few days blockage of their supply? Look, they want to unwind this deal. They want to raise interest rates. They need to for their economy. The reasoning doesn't always have to make sense on stuff. Okay. Just because they have enough oil doesn't mean they could deploy it in the supply chains fast enough to be able to meet demand. Okay, I'll give you a good example. How many people here in the US know about our strategic supply of oil? Biden burnt through it, right? I think Trump's trying to redo it, but most people don't even know that. They just see or hear that gas is going to be more expensive. I can tell you from people here in Texas, as soon as they say that they're going to run out of gas, everybody and their mom goes to the gas station with 55-gallon drums and their auxiliary tank and everything else and fills up. And you can't even get into the gas station because so many people rush in at one time. I would assume, and maybe I'm wrong about cultural differences here, but I would expect it would be something similar in Japan. You could see a huge spike in demand if people thought that there was going to be a shortage. That just needs to be the perception or the narrative that's out there. And then you're going to see everybody running and clamoring for those resources all at once. Again, like yelling fire in a theater. People don't look for the fire, they just run. And is that good or bad? That's to be determined. But I think that they could easily orchestrate a narrative that would cause significant demand for energy there. And like I said, they're on a razor's edge. Anything that changes, public perception or has an impact on their economy for more inflation, they're gonna have to move interest rates. It's a good point that you bring up, though. Like, that's very logical. I'm just saying, like, people aren't logical; they're emotional. Um, Honest Dane, good to see you today. By the way, appreciate you coming by and introducing your friend. He says, Mr. Legacy, hi to the Tea Lady. Hats off to all that you built for us at Digital Wealth Partners and Digital Ascension Group. Trump's State of the Union last night was great, in my opinion. What are the top 2 things you liked? Anything you disliked? I mean, a lot of it was good. I like that he brought in the hockey team and congratulated them and like gave them some medals and stuff. I don't know. It seemed a little overboard, but cool. I liked the fact that, he talked about, I will say this about Trump. He does what he says he's going to do most of the time. Most politicians don't do that. He just kind of doubled down on that last night and talked through the things that they have been able to execute on. He completely skipped over crypto. Didn't like that. A lot of his votes, I think, came from people in crypto. So for him to just leave that out, I felt was a little. I mean, there's a lot to get through, right? And it's a State of the Union, so maybe crypto isn't the best thing for that. But that was one of the things I disliked. I wish he would have woven that in there somehow. I also don't necessarily like. I see how he makes this correlation and why other people think it sounds impressive. But like markets being at an all-time high and pension funds being at an all-time high and all these things, they sound great, right? There's a lot of inflation in our economy, and people move to risk on to be able to generate a return. And so we've seen huge amounts of inflows into markets over the past 5 years because they printed a crap ton of money. I don't know. I'm concerned for where the markets are at. PE ratios are at astronomical levels. 25 on a PE ratio is not good. This person says Trump was going to give Jake a freedom medal, but Jake wasn't there. I was not there to receive. I don't need any accolades or medals. I appreciate the kind words, though. So anyway, those are the few things I thought he did well. He always speaks well, and that's why I think a lot of people like him. I can tell you, I disagreed with a lot of Obama's stuff that he rolled out. Great public speaker, fantastic public speaker. So any politician that does well tends to be able to speak well in front of people. We'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Again, good seeing you today. Hope you and the wife are well. We got Roberto again. He says, I'm struggling with finding someone that can advise on dual citizenship. Living in Canada on tax implications for dual citizens, I have been told I should renounce my U.S. citizenship because I'm taxed no matter where I live. It can be good and bad, right? So Canada, they have much higher taxes than we do here, but it is residency based. Whereas U.S. citizenship and taxes are citizenship based. So it doesn't matter where you live in the world. There's double tax treaties between the U.S. and whatever the counterparty is out there. Wherever the tax is more is what you pay. If you are looking for somebody that has extensive knowledge on both of those jurisdictions for tax, I would highly recommend reaching out to Aaron Grinhaus. I've talked about Aaron a few times on here. He's been on my podcast multiple times. He's our counterparty that we work with up there in Canada. He's in Toronto. So if you want to talk to somebody that's extremely experienced across all the provinces up there in Canada and all the states in the U.S. and the federal laws for both, he's your guy. I'd highly recommend that. So you can just go to Grinhaus law.ca is his website, just like Haagen-Dazs, spelled like that. And if you want to email him, it's aaron@grinhauslaw.ca, and he will get back to you. He's normally pretty good about returning people's stuff, and I think that'd be very helpful for you. before you renounce your U.S. citizenship, I'd have a conversation with him. Or you could just move here, and then you don't have to worry about Canada. I mean, Canada's supposed to be like the 51st state anyway. And now that we beat them at hockey, I mean, this is giving me a hard time. Jacob, he says, LOL, at this point, we should all fly out to the Middle East, rent a bunch of boats, and close down the Strait of Hormuz ourselves. Teamwork. I am on board with that, my man. I don't think that's going to go very well, unless it's the day that they want it done. And I don't know what they're waiting on at this point. Maybe they're waiting on Satoshi to move his Bitcoin. I don't know what they're waiting on. But it feels like we're right here on the cusp of it, and there's something that needs to click before they take action on this. Wild Bill, Mr. 69, he says, if tokenized deposit CBDCs and atomic DVP are interoperable, what structural failure requires XRP over tokenized fiat as a global bridge? If neutrality is the reason, would states give up control? Good questions. So you need a way to be able to settle between institutions without having to lock up additional capital. So you could have CBDCs, you could have stable coins, you can have tokenized deposits, you can have all these things. The atomic swap component that you mentioned there would alleviate a DEX. You would be able to transact one for one with the counterparty based on stipulations in a smart contract, and it would remove the need for a bridge asset. You'd still need to route that liquidity through something that had an exchange, though, unless you're just swapping one for one, right? So if you've got tokenized stocks on one side and you've got a stable coin on the other, and both parties are okay with receiving those exact things on the other side of that transaction, then that's fine. But the way I would challenge you is what if one of those parties wants to be paid in something other than what the other party's paying in? The whole benefit to a decentralized exchange is anybody can pay with whatever they want, and you can receive whatever you want on the other side of that transaction. So as an example, this is a basic one, so less complex than what you're talking about here between banks and institutions, but I think it'll get across my point. You go to the grocery store, you want an apple. You want to pay for the apple with Apple stock. Today, you cannot do that. You have to have cash because that's the medium of exchange. In the future, I don't think imminent future, but next couple years, I think you will be able to pay for that apple with your Apple stock. I think it'll be tokenized. I think it'll be in your wallet. I think that you'll have access to it, and you will be able to exchange that Apple stock for that apple. And the merchant will receive whatever they want on the other side of that transaction. Maybe they want tokenized gold. They don't want Apple stock. They want dollars. They want Brazilian real. They want a different currency. They want silver. Any of those things would be available for them to receive that payment in versus the Apple stock that you wanted to pay with. And that's the beauty of a decentralized neutral bridge asset, to be able to exchange all this value and route that liquidity and easily swap between what the different counterparties want. So you need all these tokenized assets. You need liquidity to move onto these networks. I mean, you make a really good point with tokenized deposits, CBDCs, and all the other. But the atomic swap only works if both counterparties want to receive the exact item that's been escrowed to be swapped. If they want something different on the other side of that exchange, that's where a neutral bridge asset would play a significant role. Hopefully that gave you the answer you're looking for. Beep, boop, boop, beep. 7266. They say, hey, Jake, where did the whole 99.9% confidence thing for 12/28/12/31 come from? What was supposed to happen? I felt like things were going to move. All the players and everything was in place. And again, you know, down to the wire. You can ask anybody around me. I felt like things were going to move there. So, unfortunate, it did not play out in the time frame that I was hoping for, and hopefully nobody was over leveraged or put themselves in a position because of my opinion on something. I try to remind people of that consistently on here. We're almost 2 months into the year here, and things are all still available for the dominoes to roll pretty much at any given time. If I'm off by a couple months, a quarter, Michael Burry couldn't decide when the housing market was gonna, unwind, though he made the bet. I feel very similar. I do think I'll be vindicated at some point. Unfortunately, the time frame that I was pretty certain about was obviously off. So can't get them all right. I'm batting a pretty good percentage on things that are legitimate macroeconomic events and catalysts and things that have to be in place. Time frame, not one of those. So that's why I've stepped back from that. I'm not trying to give any time frames on stuff. I do feel that things could move before the Clarity Act, probably will move before the Clarity Act is passed for XRP. And but it's going to require these other catalysts to play out for us to see the amount of price appreciation that I'm looking for. We could, it's possible to see something lesser, but I'm not selling any of my XRP, even at a high price. But hopefully other people kind of understand the potential for it. And my concern, with a lot of what we talk about here for people is regret. And maybe they won't. People have plans. They should execute those plans. If a $10 XRP completely changes your life, take profit at $10. Understand that you're going to owe the taxes, account for that, execute on your mission. I'm probably here more for people that want multi-generational wealth and understand that assets continue to accrue value over extended periods of time. And I'm pretty confident that XRP is, Brad's got a monkey sign on his wall in his office that says XRP will rule the world or run the world. I kind of agree with that. I think that it is going to be the oil for the new financial system, the oxygen that's required for it to breathe. And if it's something that you own, it will be one of the most valuable things on the planet on the other side of the implementation of this stuff. So selling it for $10 or $20 or $50, I'm just, and again, never go broke taking profits. If you've got, a mission and you're going to be able to execute on that at those prices, you should do it. For me, I would rather, forego some things now so that my kids have a leg up and opportunities. Chris, Mr. Burns, Miss Burns, Mr. Burns, I don't know. Chris with a K. They say, what do you think will happen first? Strike by U.S. on Iran or close of Strait? I don't know that it's even going to be the U.S. that strikes Iran. I think there's a wild card out there, and I think it's the UN. I think I said this Monday night, but there might be a there. If the U.S. is going to strike, come on. Like, they've been over there for a long time. Like, you just get the show on the road if they're going to do it. If it's going to be something out of left field, like Black Swan that people don't expect, like the UN attacking Iran, that would be, it would cause the strait to close and all the catalysts and all the stuff to go. So I don't know that that's going to happen, but I feel like something's going to come out of left field here that people don't have their eye on. And that's what's going to be the catalyst to move things forward. Mills, I like it. Got millions. Mills 25, 26. They said, what do you know about the new lawsuit from Jan Street regarding XRP and price manipulation? Does it worry you? What are your thoughts? No. I've been here for a while now. I know people, like, you want a reason for stuff. You want to correlate things to this news and made this happen, or this news made this happen. Sometimes markets move and people ascribe news to the market movement versus it being the other way around. Jan Street's obviously a big deal. They've deleted all their tweets, and like, I don't know if they're running away or what's going to happen with all that. But they definitely manipulated Terra Luna based on the circumstantial evidence that's out there. And it wouldn't surprise me. I know XRP is manipulated. I know people short it. I know Ripple sells onto the market. Again, I don't make any bones about that stuff. They fund their business, but it, in the long term, will benefit XRP exponentially because of the way they've structured it. So, yeah, for them to be out there manipulating it too, wouldn't be surprised. Doesn't really affect my thesis or where I think we're going. Gen X RP-0, they say, is DWP structured LLC and revocable trust dependent on 50,000 XRP or $50,000 worth of XRP? So Digital Wealth Partners is the SEC registered RIA that does wealth management. And I'm pretty confident that we're just going to consolidate everything under Digital Ascension Group. So it'll all be DAG working on that. But the estate planning side is separate. So wealth management does require 50,000 XRP to work on that side with anchorage and institutional custody and all that stuff. To set up an LLC and revocable living trust and all that stuff that you mentioned at the beginning of this question, a lot of people start that around $50,000 worth of XRP. If you're single, if you're married, probably a bit more than that, like $80,000 in total portfolio value. So, you know, hopefully I'm doing a good job of delineating this. So the wealth management's 50,000 XRP denominated in XRP. The LLC and revocable living trust, that's around $50,000 worth of portfolio value. And if you want to work with us to set up the LLC, all you got to do is go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. We do everything end to end for you that you could possibly want for the LLC: corporate veil, template for the operating agreement, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum, articles of organization, registered agent, EIN, corporate veil service. I think I mentioned that one. Great value over there for $2,000. Nobody else is going to do all of that for that price. If you use the code, in order to get it for $2,000, it's normally $4,000. You can use the code 50OFF50 OFFDAG-LLC. That's 50 OFFDAG-LLC. Get you all that stuff. If you want to add the living trust with the assignment of the assets from the LLC to the living trust to make sure that it's affected and in there, if you want to use the code webinar trust, all capitalized at checkout, you can do them separate and get it all for like $2,800. It's $200 off with webinar trust on the other side. So great, opportunity. Don't have to do it with us. There are other people out there that do it. I've got a full ebook on how to set it up. I've given talks on all the specifics of all of that multiple times. So you can find that in my content. And then, if you want to work with another attorney to do it, more power to you. But I don't know that they're going to do it exactly the way that we do it. We've done over 8,000 of these. So up to you who you want to work with. But there is some nuance in the way that we do things to mitigate taxes and structure it the right way so that you can easily obtain a bank account and some other stuff that other attorneys and people that don't do this on an everyday basis probably won't know. The Duke. I'm gonna have to shave my beard. My nose is just itching and itching tonight. Say, hey brother, you filmed a documentary on crypto. Has it aired? Where can we watch it? We appreciate all that you do. Thanks to the tea lady for taking care of Jake. She does a good job of taking care of me. So I was in 2 documentaries, late Q3 last year. One is Money Disrupted, which is done by Fruition Films. Maya and her husband, Chris, awesome people, did a great job with that, interviewed a lot of really good people. And then we were also in another documentary that's going to air on Netflix and Hulu and a lot of the large streaming platforms. I don't know when that one's going to go out. I'm not sure. I think I remember what the name of it is, but I don't want to state that if it's not out yet. So Robert Kiyosaki was in both. and I'm excited to be just to be in the same room or on the same video with those people. Starstruck, like blown away. I hope there's a lot of people that I hold, Andy Scheckman and Peter Schiff and all these guys that have been metals and done it for 20 plus years, Mike Maloney. I hold all of them in extremely high regard. I think that they're extremely intelligent. And they saw this coming from a mile away. I really even further than that, like an ocean away. It's been multiple decades that they've been doing this, but yeah, just to be in the same documentary as those people is unreal to me, surreal, honestly. KT baby, what's going on? They say so. 985 reset tomorrow. You say thanks for being you. Blessings. So I did mention this in the mastermind, and every once in a while I'll pop into the mastermind and put in there what's on my mind. Go back and forth with people. We have multiple town halls per week. Provide a lot of value for the people there. If you do want to join the mastermind, we would love to have you. All you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1. Here it is over here. MO, like Mary Oscar, all capitalized, get you the first month for $2 there in the group. Month to month, no contract, cancel at any time. But we've got over 16,000 people connected to Discord. So I think there's a lot of value there. I try to provide a lot of value there. And we love the group. But back to what I said in the mastermind. So 958 days ago, not 85 days ago, 958 days ago, we had clarity for XRP. It was on July 13th of 2023. And what I posted in there was, that feels like a lifetime ago in some aspects. And in some ways, it feels like just yesterday. It's wild to think that that many days has passed since we were giving clarity for XRP, and we still haven't seen the real world adoption of this asset or usage here in the US. So hopefully there's something to that 589 thing, and tomorrow we're headed off to the moon. Bobo the Wood, interesting name. They say, what about the idea of BlackRock triggering when ROUSD hits 2 billion, it being enough liquidity to be used by institutions that will shock XRP's price? I don't know why 2 billion's the number. What's the market cap of ROUSD right now? Let's take a look here. I know that they crest 1 billion in 1 year. So RLUSD market cap. We're at 1.5 billion right now on ROUSD, 1.56. So it's probably going to be another 3-4 months before we get to 2 billion, maybe a little bit less than that, call it 3 months. Maybe you're right. But I think things could move sooner than that, depending on the macro and where that's at. We've got Choose Truth for Freedom. They say, thanks for all that you do, Jake. What purpose do you think you serve to the ones in control, assuming you're right to let you keep spilling secrets? Ones in control. I don't know who you mean by ones in control. I don't think the real people that are in control even have any idea who I am. Ripple and the other counterparties, obviously, at this point, know who we are, what we do. I think they want people to do well. I think that they want people that see this opportunity to take advantage of it and be able to change other people's lives and have wealth for their family and do cool stuff with it and help a bunch of people. I really do believe the meek will inherit the earth. And this is how that could happen. There's a certain type of individual that tends to find XRP and make a pretty significant investment. It only resonates with a certain type of person. it is wild to see. Like, they did a survey and it was like 80% of people that own XRP are unvaccinated. And then I can tell you from just anecdotal evidence of talking to thousands of people that hold XRP, the majority of people that hold XRP are God fearing. They're Christian by faith, most of them, or they believe in a higher power, and are somewhat, spiritual, or often pray and want to take care of their fellow man. And most people that we speak with have philanthropic interest. They want to do good for their community. Yeah, so that's kind of my analysis on it. But I don't know. I don't know what I think they need. Arm's length type stuff, and I do think they want to help people, and we provide a conduit and access for people to all these institutional products and a lot of the stuff that we're building. So I think that that's the purpose that we serve, is, we actually get to help the retail component get access to this stuff, whereas it just wouldn't have been the case otherwise. We got Rooster. They say, client in Carbon 2, good to see you. He says, for your tech analysis on AMM, and how would an HW it be determined price of XRP efficiency of the liquidity pools to mitigate slippage? What ratio was found to work best for XRP / value of payments on the XRPL? This is a David Schwartz question. I'm not going to be able to answer that to the level that you're going to need proficiently. So I'm going to sidestep it. Somebody asked me the other day, if they were if I was in Australia and I had the opportunity to ask Brad, Monica, and David a question, that's the question I'd be asking David, because he will geek out. He will light up like a light. He will tell you exactly what that ratio is and how he figured it out and how to mitigate slippage and why it works so well. That was his baby. The AMMs are his baby. So if you want a really good answer on that, something much better than I'd be able to provide you, message him on Twitter. I'm not saying DM him, but like when he posts something about technical stuff on XRP, you're gonna have to wait for the opportune time when he's in the mood. But if he says something technical about XRP, post on that post that question that you just asked me, and I bet he'll answer it for you. Brent says, Jake, seems to me that they would get price up to at least 1K and hold it there instead of starting lower and have to keep moving it up. That's quite possible. Like I mentioned before, 3 digits would start to move some of Swift's value. 4 digits is probably what they need for back-end settlement of the stock market and other markets. The DTCC and, NASDAQ, president of NASDAQ, president of New York Stock Exchange, the SEC chair, all of them have stated recently that the first application for distributed ledger technology is going to be on the back end of the stock market to reconcile trades and settle. That's XRP, in my opinion. And that's $5 to $6 trillion a day in volume globally on the back end of stock markets. I don't know what it is directly for those exchanges of the US stock markets, probably a bit less than that, maybe 2 to 3 trillion. But that's still a lot of liquidity moving through XRP on a daily basis. And it would need a 4-digit price in order to be able to facilitate that. So you might be onto something there, Brent. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it go straight to 4 digits. Haley says, hey, Jake, I was scammed and lost all my XRP. I'm told there's a lot of it. Just please warn people. Very sorry to hear that, Haley. That's why we do what we do with institutional custody. There are a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of people that impersonate me online. This is the real me. I'm not AI. You can see my hands. Move my plant back here, until we see, and even after we see regulation in this space, there's going to continue to be scams and people that try to take this from people. I mean, there were people that stole stock certificates from people's homes back in the day, I'm sure. Anyway, bad actors can maliciously take advantage of people, they're going to. So just be careful out there. Don't ever give anybody else your seed phrase to your cold wallet. If you get a phone call from the cold wallet or from an exchange and it feels off at all, just hang up. Don't talk to them. You know, I'd have a completely separate device that you're opening stuff up on, have multi-factor authentication on it. Just do everything that you can to be operating in the most secure way that you can. So again, I'm sorry to hear about your loss. I'm hopeful that maybe you'll have a little bit more time to recoup that before things move here. Rockin', they say, realistically, how long can we just be staged in the Middle East with all the carriers, subs, manpower, economically? Surely this is more than a nothing burger. God bless. Again, I feel like this is just a big show. I feel like what's going to happen over there is going to come out of left field and be something unexpected by people. Because I'm with you. This seems like a lot of effort for not anything to happen yet. Supras 2025, they say JRCT, XRP, Bank Online, NDAs, Execute, BlackRock, ETF Live, Ledger hot, Clarity Pass through other crypto projects hot. Is this the vision of the domino theory? I'm assuming it's Japanese reverse carry trade, XRP, Bank Online. Not. I would have a different order there. So the ETF would have to come before XRP's price would move, in my opinion. Once if you're talking about NDAs as options to buy XRP at low prices to begin using it, possible, post price appreciation, because you're buying it for pennies when it's worth a lot more. And then I do think that after we see price appreciation for XRP, that we will get the Clarity Act, and that'll just pour gas on the fire. We actually made it to the bottom of the chat here. I've got through all the super chats tonight, which is wild to me. So appreciate you guys asking good questions. We'll hang out for another, call it 10 minutes here, and then we'll wrap it up tonight. Martin says, don't trust anyone with your wallets. Don't give them any information. That is good etiquette there, Martin. I wish other people would adhere to those guidelines. My wife pointed out, I will never ask you to communicate with me directly. We have a team of 20 people that are customer service focused at this point. It's a rare deal when I interact with somebody. If you do message us, my wife or myself likely respond to you. If it is the right account. If anybody ever tells you to get on Telegram or WhatsApp or any of that, I do not, to the best of my ability, communicate on either one of those platforms. I'll never solicit people, to go to those platforms. We do have a Discord, obviously, for the mastermind. But again, that's paid access to that. If you join that, you may get spammed by fake Jakes when you're setting that up and moving on to Discord. We run you through exactly all the things to turn off so that won't happen. But inevitably, people don't read the email that they get or watch the video that's in the email that they get. So still happens, and then people get frustrated, which I get. But we do everything we can to make sure that people aren't, berated by fake Jakes. So just be careful out there. Like I said, if it seems too good to be true, I'm never going to ask you to send your XRP anywhere. I don't work at Digital Wealth Partners. I own the company. I don't manage assets. I can't see client information. I don't have any of it. So our team over there would be the ones working with you in Anchorage and Securitize to be able to move assets into institutional custody. Anything other than Anchorage and institutional custody with Securitize, not anything we provide. Our advisors communicate through email over there. You'll be assigned an advisor before you get an email. So if anything seems out of line or fishy, don't hesitate to reach out, ask other people in the mastermind. We have 3,000 clients at Digital Wealth Partners at this point, and they can vouch for it, tell you exactly the process they went through, and if you're seeing something different, it's probably a scam. Jay Nee says, a rather popular XRP YouTube influencer with the initials CS mentioned today about how the reverse carry trade won't happen. Thoughts on this? I'm assuming you're saying Crypto Sensei. That's my guess for CS. Could be somebody else, I guess. Look, I have my opinions. Other people have their opinions, and that's all good. I don't hate on anybody's hustle. It sucks for me to come out here and beat the same drum all the time. There's a lot of people that pivot and go back and forth on things to keep it interesting. I will say this, I'm always going to be consistent. If I really believe something, that's what I'm going to come talk about and explain for you guys. If I'm presented with some different data, like I've kind of pivoted on the Bitcoin conversation, right? Like for a long time, I thought Bitcoin was going to zero. And then I was kind of like 50-50. I'm kind of back to like 70-30. I think that with quantum computing, I don't know that they're going to be able to upgrade the network. They're going to have to fork it. There's going to have to be something done in order to mitigate quantum risk for Bitcoin. And I think that's rapidly approaching, like very soon, within the next 12 months. So if they don't fork and fix things, I mean, there's a lot of wallets that are exposed to that, even if they did upgrade the network. I think if Bitcoin is meant to stay around, it'll move on the XRPL as wrapped collateral there, settle through XRP, and if enough people still want to use it, then it could get to 1 million someday. But I look at it at like the Alta Vista or the Napster of crypto. First mover, disintermediated a bunch of things, great groundwork and foundation. Not Google. It's not Spotify. It's not any of the things that I think we will use in the future. So that's my interpretation of it. And again, just my opinion. But I'm 70% it goes to zero, 30% that it could go to 1 million. Not great odds for me. Not enough for me to put my money in it here. If we saw like a $20,000 Bitcoin, I'd probably throw some money at it, 20 grand. We already did that one. We got Rooster. He says, for the AMM question, I did deep research on it with Gemini. Could I send it to you to see what you think? If so, would I send it? Where would I send it? Also, I will also reach out to David S. Satoshi. Appreciate the super chat. Yeah, just send it over there to info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and just let them know, Jake asked me to send this. Say you paid for a super chat. They'll get it over to me. Ask for Morgan when you send it over there. So info@digitalfamilyoffice. You can send it, and ask for Morgan and say Jake asked me to send this to him. We just did this one. We'll take a couple more, and then we'll wrap it up tonight. I've got Lux 637 says, hey, Jake, I want to see what you think about quant. With the amount of quant flow, do you think adoption by Bank of England could drive supply shock? I made a lot of money on quant. Just transparently, I got in quant at like $7 because of Kevin Cage. Sold at a couple $100. So I did well on quant. I don't see the huge value proposition for quant. It's to pay fees to be able to access and use Overledger. It doesn't settle value across that network. So with quant flow, though, I'm unaware of what that is. I'm ignorant on that. So that could change what the token's used for. And if there is a way to transmit value using quant over Overledger, there could be something there for sure. I would need to do more research on it before having a better understanding to be able to articulate that or have an opinion on it. So let me take that back. I will do some, because I hadn't heard of that. So I will follow up. I'm going to butcher that. I'm not even going to try to say the name. Thank you for the super chat. They say, are we out of the wood yet? Out of the woods yet with the bear market? I'm 50-50 on it. I think like the worst feeling part is over, but we could see a little bit more downside before we have the appreciation everybody's looking for. Bert Vogler 67 says, do they, the US, Iran, and Israel, know about the domino theory? I think that they definitely do. I think that there's an absolute, like I said, coordinated effort over there. It's just a weird, just a lot of open, transparent information being listed out there on the internet for people to be able to get access to. Seems like a show to me. So, trying to think if I had any other wonderful ideas that I wanted to share tonight with you. Go check out the mastermind. You know, oh. See, my wife always on top of it. If you do want to get into Digital Wealth Partners and you got at least 50,000 XRP, but you don't want to pay the AUM fees yet, and you're like, I'm on the fence, but I want to be proactive and I want to set things up. If you already have an LLC, we've got 3 days left here through the end of this week where this code is going to work. So you can use the code onboard100 to get you $100 off the onboarding over there at Digital Wealth Partners. So it's $900 to onboard instead of $1,000. We really don't make any money on that because it goes to our partners, but we want to, provide people an avenue that want to be proactive, a way to get their account set up before they fund it. We feel like, we're going to have products in the very near future to be able to generate enough returns to cover all the costs associated there. But we get the fact that people don't necessarily want to hold their stuff there and pay a ton of fees. We have a lot of people that have a foot in the door. They've moved over enough to have an account, and that's kind of how they've hung out. We would expect you to fund within 90 days. It can linger on a little longer than that, but if you want to be proactive, we would love to work with you. If you have larger amounts of digital assets, more than 50,000 XRP, you can just go to digitalwealthpartners.net, fill out the contact us form, and at checkout, again, use the code onboard100, get you $100 off that onboarding fee. So that's for DWP. If you need the LLC, again, that's only for people that have an LLC already. And international people can be individuals. But if you need the LLC, you can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io, use the code 50OFF50 OFFDAG LLC, get you everything end to end for that LLC. Or you can set it up yourself or work with another attorney. We just want to be an avenue for that. And then last but not least, if you do want to join the mastermind, again, we would love to have you in there. Over 16,000 people month to month, no contract, very happy, get a lot of value from it. And you can try it out for $2 if you use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar. So with that, I'm going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday, a wonderful finish to your week, and we will see you on the next one.